Well, I've completed the last video, now need to render. Wonder what I should do. There is Galgun Double Peace, a game I bought as a joke, but I can't really play it right now since my computer is rendering, so you know what? Might as well pick up Zelda where it last left off. Alright, here we go. And, oh shit, did I just the Zelda? So, the Nintendo Switch has been out for a couple of weeks, and like pretty much all the people who picked it up around launch, I also got the newest Legend of Zelda. Not because I'm a big fan of the franchise or anything, the only other game I played to completion being A Link to the Past, and that only happened because the cart I picked up at a flea market had a save file of an almost complete game, and seeing all the cool powers I could get lit the fire under my ass in order to complete it. But mostly because it was a game that everyone was talking about and had some pretty solid first impressions on it, and I can comfortably say that I have never disliked any first-party game Nintendo has put out. Unfortunately, a combination of family drama, unemployment, re-employment, a competitor to that job, shutting down and doubling my workload, unemployment again, job hunting led me to not being able to play it in any meaningful way. So there it laid, relatively untouched aside from a quick session or two of Binding of Isaac until I started making videos. See, to make one video of Dark Souls, it takes about an hour to render, and during that time, there is dig fucking all I can do with my PC unless I want it to sound like it actually screaming. So I decided if I'm going to have an hour a day I can't use my PC, and a couple of hours I can't internet because YouTube eats all of the bandwidth, once you start an upload, might as well give Zelda a shot. And one completed playthrough of Dark Souls and the beginning of a sequel later, and here I am, completing my second ever Zelda game. So what did I think? 8.5 out of 10. If you have a Switch, well worth the buy, well worth the time invested. Alright, you want specifics. Fine, let me give you some. First of all, the visuals. And if you're one of those graphics don't matter people, fuck straight off, because they do. It's video games. That implies a rather important emphasis on visual feedback. But that's besides the point, because the game looks nothing short of stunning. The high-def 720p screen on the Switch itself is great and delivers visuals that match up to the claims of being a home console one can take on the go. The TV looks good too, but I prefer to play it in handheld mode simply so I can track the progress of my renders as well as play it on my bed, along with the fact that while the boost to Full HD is nice, some of the effects that are enabled only when docked actually make the frame rate of the game worse, and I'm one of those people who one of the first things they do with a new PC game is turn off all of the motion blur, god rays, and other assorted bells and whistles unless the game is firmly within 60 FPS. So more often than not, handheld mode was my main experience. As for the art style, it's fantastic. The cel-shaded, almost painterly look to the game looks gorgeous. Oftentimes I would stop at the top of mountains or vistas just to go, wow, that sunset not only looks absolutely stunning over those mountains, but I didn't even have to go outside, making this all the more better because fuck that place. One thing I think could be improved are the enemies. While each one looks fantastic on their own, there are simply not enough of them. We have the pig people, their big brothers, the reptile people, the Magitech tanks, and the bosses whose designs are pretty cool and I will simply let you discover for yourselves. This doesn't sound too bad, 3 factions are pretty good until you see the differences, which boil down to palette swaps. That's right, there are basically 4 main enemy types who all look the same aside from coloration. There are a few other ones who show up, but they are much less common. Then, of course, is the sound. As with previous Zelda titles, to my understanding, most of the characters communicate to you with text boxes and made-up gibberish speak. This is okay, it doesn't detract from the experience, but in a first for Zelda, again, to my knowledge, there is spoken voice lines in cutscenes, and I kind of wish there wasn't. It's not bad, at least the English dub, but it doesn't add anything, honestly. If anything, it kind of breaks my immersion, and if anything, impacts it negatively. The music that plays is also good, action and fighting themes suitably pulse-pounding and cinematic scores go well with the scenes they are portraying, but like the enemies, they are all extraordinarily alike. To the point that at the 4-hour mark, I basically said fuck it and just put a podcast on to listen to while playing. As for playing the game, it's pretty good. Combat feels meaty, weapons feel and are reacted to in ways that I respect enemies to, and the combat systems of dodge, defend, and attack are explained to a satisfactory degree in one of the early game dungeons, or as they are called, shrines. Along with minor crafting and upgrade systems, ignored entirely in my playthrough, a cooking system that allows users to create meals and elixirs that heal and buff you in various ways, abused thoroughly through my playthrough, there are also a few mechanics not explained in detail, like how you can parry the Guardians, aforementioned Magitech tank faction, lasers with your shield, the fact that only one buff can be applied at a time and similar ones do not stack, and sneak attacks are a thing, in fact. It is here where I must also expose two of the three major flaws I have with the game. First is the implementation of survival elements, chief among them the stamina and weapon durability. Weapons, while in combat, oftentimes only last 3, if you are lucky, 4 engagements. Afterwards, they break and are lost for good. This led to many times, unless necessary, me running and going around unnecessary fights. And speaking of running is the stamina wheel. When you first start the game, it is atrocious. Link gets tired at rather pathetic rates that even my chin-beard-owning self finds, well, pathetic. Either locate and make copious use of food and elixirs with stamina recovering and buffing effects, or invest your shrine orbs, your prize for finishing shrines, in stamina heavily. Another letdown is the shrines, with the exception of the Divine Beasts. Most of the shrines are single puzzles recreated a couple of times, each a bit more complex. A battle against a particular enemy, or simply a reward at the end of a quest. They each feel incredibly stale and sterile, all sort of blending together, only seeked out because I needed to get more health points. Now let's talk about the story. The story of this installment to the franchise is a bit different than previous ones, again, to my knowledge. You are Link, and you awaken after 100 years after being defeated by Ganon. That's right, instead of preparing for your final confrontation like most games, you have already done so and have failed. Thus, guided by Zelda's voice, you embark to collect tools and allies to once again challenge Ganon. Once the stakes are set, from there the world is your oyster. Do whatever you want, the story is driven forward when you want it to, go and collect shrines and side quests to your heart contents. Seek out the Divine Beast to move the story along, or just book it straight to Ganon in order to beat him as soon as possible. This story is functional if well executed, with the exception of the ending. It is extraordinarily lackluster, ordinary, and exactly as expected. A bit of a letdown to me. But in the end, the Breath of the Wild is a solid game, well worth the purchase for any Switch owner. Alright, well, that's my thoughts on The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. If you liked the video, like it, subscribe, ring the bell. If you didn't like it, well, there's a button for that too. Comment with whatever you want, and please consider supporting the channel via Patreon or other links down below if you enjoyed this. My name is Juan, and that's me saying goodbye.